Well, Mike, first off, this has been in the works for some time. We've been talking about having a conversation, you and I. I'm just so glad that we not only have an opportunity to connect, but more importantly, have this conversation that we could share with the rest of the world. So Mike Vargas, welcome to the Future Human Experience.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So Mike, tell me a little bit more. I mean, you're doing some really intentional work right now in the state of Arizona for our country. Share us a little bit more about what are you leading? What are some of the efforts that you're leading on right now?
So I was an Albert Einstein Fellow in Washington, D.C. for the Defense Department the last 2 years. And there was an opportunity towards the tail end of that to come back to Arizona and start up a project called the Arizona STEM Acceleration Project, which me and some of my compadres have been working on the last couple years now. It's a $10 million grant from the Department of Ed to overhaul STEM education in the state of Arizona. We're really proud of all the work we've been doing. We've been working nonstop 24/7 to basically bolster the existing infrastructure that already exists in Arizona, like reinforce it from a lot of the damage that was incurred over COVID, and also to really try to bolster our numbers in STEM land because they're pretty low right now. It's kind of bleak in our sector, and so we're working on trying to make some positive changes there. So,
and Mike, tell me and the audience a little bit more about what is STEM and why is it important? We've been having some conversations of this in community. It seems that it's becoming a culturally relevant word in the 2000s. Tell us a little bit more about what STEM is and why does it matter?
So the acronym Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math has been around for almost 20 years now, but it still means a lot of different things to different people. In our perspective here in Arizona, we still don't actually have a definition of it, which is a little bit frustrating. So, and the reason for that is because it's so all over the place, it doesn't really allow us the ability to like hone in and focus on it. So to give you an example, a lot of our neighboring states all have very definitive, defined definition of it. So like Nevada is a great example. They actually have a STEM office at their statewide level that says these are all the parameters, these are all the standards that need to be followed to even if you want to say I'm a STEM school, right? So the reason the standards are so important is because right now anyone can basically come in and say I'm a STEM school, I'm a STEM this, I'm a STEM that. In reality, when you pull the curtain back, it's a 3D printer in a closet somewhere that never gets used, right? But I got one, so I'm a STEM school, right? But a lot of states have realized that, and they said, no, you can't do that anymore. It's not fair. We're gonna set the bar, and you gotta, and we're gonna raise all the ships, and you're gonna meet this level, this expectation, with the hopes of helping all students. And so we've been big advocates for that here in Arizona. We still don't have it yet. We're working on it. There's been a lot of work towards that. There was a group last year that came up with after-school STEM standards, which has been pretty great because that hadn't happened before. But we still don't have that elusive, these are the STEM standards for Arizona. We have the science standards. We have physics, chemistry, biology, but the idea of STEM is a little bit different, and I think a lot of folks don't really understand those nuances.
So Mike, I love that, and let's dive into that a little bit more, right? So when I remember hearing the first time the term STEM, I was like, well, science, I remember doing that, right? The chemistry, the physics, the biology, math. Well, yeah, that's been established in schools for some time. Tech and engineering, okay, that might be something new. Is that kind of where the space or the challenges are being faced on right now, and kind of making that word STEM a reality? Is it then that T and that E to kind of make it more not only tangible but realistic in our communities for people to actually see themselves as something around STEM?
Let's put it into a really basic perspective. The feds did this a couple years ago. They said, what does it take to make a milkshake? Right? Have you seen this one already? I have a good friend of mine, and she's probably watching. She's doing the salsa version for us, which I think will be a much better fit for Arizona. But it's the same idea. So the idea, right, is like, well, how do so if I have the ice cream, right? That's a silo. That's either an S, a T, or E, or M, right? And then, I can keep blending these things together, but at the end of the day, I want to get to the milkshake. And the milkshake is the blended part. It's all the stuff wrapped up together, right? I mean, think about it, right? Like who in your everyday working life does just the science or just the computers or just, that doesn't happen. That doesn't work like that, right? Real STEM is a blending of all four silos, and you're bringing those things together to either make the milkshake or the salsa or whatever, because that's the good stuff, right? That's the stuff that we need. But to get there, I think we have to adopt more of what's called a transdisciplinary, like a convergence mindset of, we got to get from this one discipline and this one thing to how do I bring these things together, to do whatever it's going to be, whether I'm solving a major problem, whether I'm, trying to, build something new. I mean, when you think about, what we're actually teaching kids, right? We're teaching kids in these silos because that's all we've ever done for our entire existence. And we're not really saying, hey, let's solve this problem using all four letters, right? And I think that's really where we need to get going, not just as an education system, but as a society, because that's what the future is going to be about. It's going to be about those larger problems that we got to solve. So,
Mike, spot on. I love that, right? So let's dive into that, right? So we have a history of creating silos in our education system. We have a history of creating programs around those silos, and therefore either emphasizing those systems and just integrating those systems. Also, even as parents ourselves, we're like, well, that's how we learned. Why do we have to change it for the future? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing in this work on making those silos more into a salsa or into the milkshake? What are some of those challenges you're seeing to bring those things together and break down those silos?
Well, so with our project at ASU, with the Arizona STEM Acceleration Project, I mean, we've really got a 30,000-foot view, and we've been able to see, like, what are different, not only our communities doing, but down to like the school level, right? And I think one of the things that a lot of folks don't realize is that one of the things that we're doing is we're going in, we're saying, all right, go teach some STEM, go get it done, go do this, right? And if you're the second year teacher, you've maybe had one class in any science in any of the four pillars in your entire, like, you don't know enough. So you're like, well, what do I even do, right? Where do I even start from? Because on day one, I was given a classroom, a roster with 35 kids, some desks, and if I'm lucky, I got a whiteboard, right? But that's it, and I don't have anything else. I don't have coding technology. I don't have laptops. I don't even have the Wi-Fi or the bandwidth to like run all those systems. I don't have the tools, I don't have anything. And so what our project's been doing is we've been trying to give teachers all that stuff and say, hey, we're going to give you supplies, we're going to give you tools, we're going to give you the professional development to learn how to use everything. And then we're going to, encourage you to do something with it that, creates a positive impact on your students and on your community. And I think the results, have spoken for themselves for what we've been doing, because, everything we're seeing is like, oh wow, it works. You give teachers time, money, and resources, and the
transformation could happen.
Yeah, like every day I get to read these amazing stories of like, I built a garden with my class, and now the entire fifth grade's using it. Or we're doing a rocket club, and now we're going to DC for the national rocket competition. David Worth out there, good job. Another one of our fellows took their students to DC for Regeneron for the big science conference. I mean, and all these things are starting with a little bit of time, a little bit of funds, a little bit of materials to basically nurture and get those seeds to grow. And I think if we do more of that at the holistic level, we'll see even more results in the future.
The analogy of not only planting the seeds, but nurturing them and seeing them grow, that resonates a lot with me. But I also understand that there's also some challenges in that, right? That sometimes we are not the individuals that either plant the seeds Or two, we're not the ones that are nurturing them all the time, because we have to pass it along to someone else to do that, right? And that might be either someone else in the community, might be another professor, might be another superintendent, might be another head of education. How do we navigate some of those incentive systems that sometimes become a little bit more challenging to say, let me pass on the baton, or let me pass on the water to the next individual? How do we as a community, or as a state, or as a country, or as a global member of the global community, navigate some of these challenges of, let me plant a seed today for a tree that's going to be apparent probably in the next 20 years?
So I think you've touched on something that you see it, I see it, but not enough people see it, right? Because when I go out and I advocate for STEM education, usually I get, education, STEM, and a wall comes up really quick, which is so frustrating, because you're like, look, do you understand like the advantages of a little tiny investment, right? Just a little seed will grow a huge oak tree if we allow it to, right? And so, one of the things that frustrates me is the fact that we are not getting enough people to understand that, this isn't just something fun to do. It's not something that we just, let's just do this because it makes us feel good, right? This is an investment in the future. This is an investment in ourselves. I want someone smart taking care of me when I'm old, right? You do too, right? Yeah. And you want to make sure that the people that are replacing us are going to be qualified and ready to do it, right? And right now they're not, and we're not thinking like that. And so, if you look at what other parts of the world are doing, I'm doing my PhD right now, so I study this all the time, right? And I can tell you that some of the other countries, well, I'm not going to name, that are out there, they don't have an outlook of 3 years or 5 years. They're already looking 20, 30, 50 years out in the future. It's like that old saying that there's more honor students in China than we have students. I don't know if you've heard this or not, but it's true, right? And we are not taking note, and we're not taking it seriously. And if we don't start doing that, our children and our children's children are gonna, have the repercussions of that. And I really do see that in all the data I've seen, right? You look at so I just wrote a paper about the DoD's investment in STEM education. Not to go down a huge tangent, but just give you an idea, right? So if you look at the pie, you look at the federal pie, right? Who gets the most amount of money for STEM education? Usually it's NSF, they get a huge amount. Department of Ed gets a big amount. NASA, but then right there, and I'm talking really close in that pie next to NASA, is Department of Defense. And the Department of Defense understands that in order to keep the country safe, we better invest in people. We better invest in our infrastructure and the people that are running all our systems and protecting us every day. So DoD STEM, their portfolio of 400 programs they run, plus the SMART scholarship, they're actively trying to invest in the country to make sure that we have enough of these future students that will lead us in technology in the future. And but at the statewide level, at the national level, we're doing those things, but at the statewide level, it's scattered all over the place. And I think that's what's really frustrating for me, is that for me, I'm like, well, if the federal level understands this and they understand what's at stake, why aren't we doing that at the statewide level, right? Why aren't we doing these kinds of things? And I don't have an answer for that. I really don't.
Yeah.
So,
and Mike, if we build on that a little bit, we're at the state level, we're just at a conference together, yep. And we're able to share a little bit more about how sometimes when we talk about STEM, we think about STEM about being something that's probably strictly academic, probably strictly about, okay, how do I put certain pieces together, manual, or putting a pencil down to the paper. But what you were sharing with me earlier, right, about teachers doing some after school programs, or teachers taking their students to these events or these projects or these competitions, that comes beyond academic. That comes on investing in this child, investing in their heart and their experiences. Can you share us with a little bit more about where does this work in STEM come from, like the community? Where, as a community or as an individual, if I care about STEM, do I have to be the STEM, not only the STEM professional, but the STEM expert to get engaged in this work as well?
No. A good friend of mine, Dr. Jane Jackson at ASU, always talks about how, physics is everywhere. Like, she's always talking about it. And she loves to talk about how, your HVAC guy is like a master physicist at the end of the day, right? Yes. And he is. Like, he totally, like, so if you think about, all the, from the thermodynamics side to like the electrical engineering side, like that's STEM, right? And I think, even from what I see, a lot of folks still don't fundamentally understand that, like, we're not asking everyone to go out and be like a full-blown PhD research scientist, right? That's not what this is about. We're talking about the jobs of the future that are going to require a little extra set of credentials that you currently don't have, like to be the HVAC guy, to be the electrician, which of course translates into jobs, right? These are the jobs of the future, right? Future Arizona has this really great statistic. I love throwing it out there because they basically did a calculation. They said, only 48% of Arizonans have a certificate post high school. 48%, right? The goal is to get to 70. And if we do that, which I think we could, if we actually bared down and did it, it's like an economic driver of like $4 billion that would come into the state. It would literally raise all, it would raise like living, working conditions across the state on a whole new level. And other states, they're above the 50 mark. They're above 55, 60. People have those certificates. And I think once we start addressing the fact that, like, STEM careers make more money, let's be honest, they are huge economic drivers in any kind of system that you're in. And it doesn't even matter, like, whether I'm in the city or if I'm out in like Wilcox, Arizona, right, in the middle of nowhere. Wilcox is in the middle of nowhere, but it's pretty dang close, right? But even having like a STEM job, even in a small place like that, it's a big effect. So, if you look at like even some of our smaller towns, even if like you could graduate 4 to 5 extra people per year that would have these certificates in STEM and things or whatever, that is a huge economic boost to that community that would have huge ramifications in the long run. And so now that we're in an environment where, I'm not dictated to go downtown every day for work, right? Why are we not doing this? Why are we not putting, STEM in rural Arizona, to the level where, hey, let's get people going and start moving stuff. So, I look at it as a way, as a big STEM advocate, I look at it as a way of not only making like working conditions better for Arizonans, but I also think of it as like, this is just a better thing for our whole future, right? And that just cascades down, better future, better economics, better national security at the end of the day. The list goes on and on. And so I really firmly believe, after all the mountains of research I have read, right, doing my PhD on it right now, that everything I have seen has said, if we do these things, we will be better off. And I really do believe that.
Mike, let's dive into the certifications piece, because I agree with you. I do think that as we continue to progress our ability to learn in these spaces, more we could be of service to our communities, to the next generation. But the reality is that our ability to access these certifications today might be a little bit easier than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. One of the conversations I've been having inside the education system has been, at least specifically more into higher ed, has been the cost of education continues to go up, even though the cost of learning is going down. Where do you think the future of education is in this space where basically having the internet now creates an opportunity to have equitable access? There's still a lot of tools that need to be built out and infrastructures that need to be built out in our communities. But where do you stand on where this digital world could take our ability to learn, our ability to teach the next generation?
Well, I don't know how many hours we got left, but I'll tell you what I just told you a couple minutes ago if we went on air. I think we're going to get to a point where your AI is going to be smarter than the entire university, right? About 10 years from now, it'll be like, well, what do I need to hire this person for with a degree to do this job when my AI can do all of it for me for free, and it's even more accurate and better, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think at the end of the day, we need to reevaluate kind of. And the other thing too is like I see students at ASU all the time, and some of the stuff that they're learning, like you can already see like this is going to be obsolete even by the time they graduate. Like in their freshman level classes, you're like, oh, that's really cool. They learned that, but I don't know if that's going to be around much longer, And so I think what we need to focus on, especially with our students today, is that problem solving component. And I'm sure you've heard this a million times before. Like it's not necessarily all these like things I need to learn, but it's the ability to like think outside of the box and to solve the problems that is what's really gonna make the difference between a solid graduate and someone that's not really there. And I think we do that to a certain extent, but not across the board. We don't do it across the board, right? And even in K-12 spaces, we don't do nearly enough of it. I mean, you have like the project-based learning folks that came out about 15 years ago. Let's go, and that whole momentum, I think, really made a difference. It was a driver. Modeling instruction, same thing. Think outside of the box. Let's how do I problem solve? And I think all those initiatives are great, but we're not doing it enough. Like I don't see it enough, even where I'm paying attention and where I'm doing my research. Like there are still schools in the state of Arizona where every day, here's my worksheet. We're gonna do these 10 vocab terms. We're gonna solve a word puzzle, and then on Friday we're gonna do this. We're gonna do a science experiment from YouTube. And people are still doing that. And as much as we were like, we're doing all these great things, and until we pause and take a second and like, okay, guys, let's get rid of this trash and start getting into the modern century. Like we just have to start doing these things. Yeah.
Mike, I had a recent conversation with a student, and we're talking about what their aspirations are in the future. And one of the encouragements I gave them, building on what you were sharing with me, right, about how to encourage students to solve problems, was I shared with them this perspective that really what you're trying to do is you're trying to build your prism to see the world. And your prism is unique to you. And even though I'm graduating next to 100, 200 people either in high school today and in college tomorrow, our prisms are unique and our experiences make us unique. And as we talk about where our teachers and where our educators want to meet our students, yes, I understand that sometimes the challenges comes on standardization of that experience, but when you see the outcome that really makes them thrive in this digital world that's moving super fast is their ability to be outside of that standardization and be very unique with that unique prism. And so when I shared that with them, it was kind of like an eye-opening experience for them too, for them to look at, okay, wow, I have just a few more years left until I decide where I would like to go. But it was just beyond the just, okay, what are the headlines of this experiences, of these careers? It was more about what problem do I care about going to solve and what experiences could help me go solve those. Does that resonate with you?
Oh yeah, man. Okay. Is the Prism thing like copyrighted? I'm gonna totally steal it.
Okay. Yeah, sure, man. Whatever we can make this world better, let's do it. Actually, I heard it. It was several years ago. I heard it in a talk. It was on sci-fi writers. Oh. And the way that they were talking about sci-fi, about how do you make sci-fi relevant today, they were talking about more from the perspective of when Jurassic Park hit the movie theaters in the 1990s, was, if I'm not mistaken, right? Mid-1990s. That was the moment for sci-fi folks to say, we've seen everything now. Like, this is it. Like, this is the moment that we've seen everything. How do we come up with something new from this? Like, it was that unique of an experience in the movie theater. And that was the inspiration that today in this digital age, our kids they could see anything. Yeah. Like, you want to go and just Google it, just ask chat, like, You could go and learn it. So how do you make an experience unique? And what they encouraged was like, look, as a writer, you're trying to help an audience see the world from your prism. As soon as I heard that, I was like, wait, like this is what also like, and so like as a good, like now when you see movies, you see there's nothing mind-blowing brand new. What you see is you're seeing the world just from a different perspective, a different prism, right? And they use the same example from the movie The Matrix, right? Like people walked out of, they were thinking about the kung fu and the bullet point, all that stuff. That was cool. But what's become relevant and long-lasting has been the story, right? It was looking at the world from the perspective of, oh wow, like this is the social commentary of this world, right? And so that was my inspiration of the Prism story.
Oh, I love it. We actually have a guy in our office at the Center for Science and Imagination who actually wrote about the Matrix and all of that. And I just, anyway, I know this isn't a sci-fi podcast, but I could go down that rabbit hole. We could talk for days.
I appreciate it,
but I think that's important. Like the whole the Prism thing. It's it's a thing. And I think especially with kids now, more than ever, like we need to like realize that they have their own prism, right? Yeah. And I think we're still in this mindset of, okay, we're gonna do this regurgitated learning, right? We're gonna recite, take this and chug it down and spit it back up and pass that test and let's keep going. And it's like, man, why are we doing that? Especially when we're at a point where I can, give everyone their own lens and their own stuff and let them go bonkers with it. I mean, I know me personally, the way I like to learn is like, I learn through my own lens and I learn, right? And I have my own whatever, but I know for the physics students I always taught, when you give them that autonomy to do and explore on their own, even just a little bit, man, it makes a big difference. And I don't think we do nearly enough of that. So
and Mike, I love that we're continuing to build on this on the Prism perspective, and I was sharing that more from the perspective of the students, but I would argue we have prisms today in our own lives, right? I mean, you have built your own career from your unique perspective as well, right? What was your inspiration to dive into this work? Because you've been very passionate about STEM and you can just continue to grind in this. What has been your call to action to this?
Grind is a good word. So, I'm a modeler. So I've done modeling for physics for years. It's a technique that is basically kind of what we're talking about, trying to get the kids to see the whole picture. Turn that, F equals MA scenario into a model, right? And I was at a workshop in like 2013 at ASU, 2014 roughly. And the gentleman got up and was talking about the fact that, we only had, 150 physics teachers left in the state or something ridiculous. And that was back then. And I was just like, oh my God, are you serious? Like that's, because when you run the numbers, it's crazy. It's like there's like one physics teacher for, just dozens of high schools, right? There's just not enough. But then when you look at the fact that like once a lot of these groups have studied, what are the big key indicators that students go into STEM careers? The two big ones have always been physics and calculus. So if you take physics or calculus by senior year, your odds of going to a STEM career later go through the roof. Physics more so, and calculus very close second. And so, and this is 10 years ago, and hearing that I was like, oh man, like we only have 159 physics teachers. Like that really resonated with me and kind of got me, like, well, what are we doing about this? Why aren't we working on this? Why are we? And then I realized there was nobody else. There wasn't anybody. And then at one point, I think I just said to myself, I was like, we could do something. We could make a difference. And so there was a group of us. We loosely refer to ourselves as the Cactus Caucus. Yeah. About eight physics teachers across the state, and we all kind of banded together and said, we're gonna do policy change, and we're gonna make conditions better because we all believe that we could do it, I think that was big because we had the belief that, we could make a difference. But two, I think we all just really understood that, like, this was needed. This was something that really needed to happen. Not just for the state, but like for ourselves included. We needed to make sure that, like, it, science got advanced in Arizona, and lo and behold, we pulled it off, and we got a bill passed in like 2016. And I think that was the encouragement we needed to, like, keep going. And so after that event happened, I think that really kind of set my path to, like, a different, I went from just hardcore physics 24/7 to STEM policy and advocacy, and I've kind of been on that path ever since. But it was that first success that kind of got it going, and that group still does a lot of great stuff today. Like, we've been doing, we got Get Set for STEM for ADE, which is actually coming back out here pretty soon. There's about $1 million that are going to be released the next month or so for teachers that want to go get extra certification, which is very exciting. Check out their website for that. But doing these kinds of things and seeing results and seeing things happen, I think have definitely encouraged me to keep going. Because our initial bill that we got passed back then, I think we went from 159 to almost 200 plus teachers, which was a huge jump. And then, of course, the money ran out and the funds ran out, and now we're actually lower than we started with 10 years ago, but that's a whole other story. I don't want to dive into politics, sure. But we need to do it again. We need to keep going. And I think that's another lesson I've learned in the last couple of years, is that whatever initiative you're working on, whatever push you're making, you got to keep going. It never actually stops.
So, Mike, what you were sharing with me right now reminds me of this really fascinating book by Isabel Wilkerson that became a bestseller in 2020 called Cast. And she looks at the challenges our perspective, or the prism, if we could call it, right, of the history of racism, but more through the lenses of a caste system. And one of the analogies she uses that's very fascinating, I've been trying to explore different ways of using it as we talk about conversations on systems or models, is she talks about how we could look at our caste system or our history of racism in our country through living in a house, right? And so when you purchase a house or you live in a house, you might not have been the one that built it. You might not be the one that erected the last wall or put on the latest roof. But you live in it today, and it's your responsibility to keep it up, right? And maintain it and understand it. And even if you have any cracks in the foundation sometimes, it's still your responsibility, right? And so you are today in that house. And so when we talk about some of the challenges that we see in STEM, or why it's important for us to be invested in it today, yes, we could recognize there's some challenges in it. We could recognize that, yes, I probably didn't put up these walls in the last history or the last 20 years of how we're navigating this, but I'm here today, right? I'm here either as a parent, I'm here as a teacher, I'm here as an advocate, I'm here as a professional, and we're all in this, right? And so what I love about your work is that you're bringing some of these challenges to life, but you're also putting us in that house with you, right? And recognizing that, hey, we all have some work to do in this house, right? We all have some work to do in this foundation. Can you share with us a little bit more about what can we do? If you're listening to this and you're a parent, you're a professional, you're a teacher, you're an educator, and you've seen some of the challenges that we've talked about today. Yeah. What can I do tomorrow to make this house a little bit better?
Oh, man. No, I love that. You can always build off a foundation, right? You can always, build your framework off the foundation, but you got to have the foundation. And but once you got that settled, there's a lot you can do. I'd say for, one of the big things that I know it sounds silly, but like, we need parents just to be advocates. We need them to say, I want this is needed, and this needs to be a part of, what we do. I think if we had more of that going on, that would start changing, things overnight. I don't think we have nearly enough of that kind of parent support, so to speak, because, if we did, we wouldn't be in the situation we're currently in. And so, I've never seen like a school district not kind of at least pay close attention to what the will of the parents are to a certain extent. And so, parents have a real, they have power. But at the same time, I get it, right? They're tired, right? They're coming home late from work and they're working more hours than they ever have before, and they're just exhausted. And so to get in there and mix it up and do politics, and that's an exhausting proposition, man. And I get it, but unless we start doing more of that, we're gonna keep going. We're not gonna go back up again, and we need to. And so. When parents ask me, well, what can we do to get more STEM in our school? What can we do in our, for our community? I'm like, engage. You got to engage. You've got to get out there and you've got to talk to the principal. You got to talk to the superintendent, and you got to say, I want this. I want this for my student. When we were on the East Coast the last 2 years, we were in a predominantly traditionally black neighborhood. We're at Drew Elementary School. Like I was telling you earlier, the standards were high, and even the parents were like, no, we're doing STEM. We're going to be highly involved. STEM was embedded throughout the curriculum. It wasn't a special. Yeah. It wasn't something like, hey, we'll do this once a week or every 2 weeks. My daughters only get STEM every 2 weeks, right? Which I think is terrible. But back there it was every single day. Plus, they went to the lab on Fridays. I mean, it was a lot, right? And I remember asking the principal, I'm like, well, I don't understand. How is it you have all this? Because we don't have anything like this on the West Coast, And she's like, well, the parents demanded it. And I was like, what? Like and she's like, yeah, no, the parents demanded that we have this and this and this and this, and we did it. And you're, okay, all right, but. I don't think we see that nearly enough here, and I do think that if parents would speak out and demand it, it would happen. So, but I do think that as far as building the house goes, on the East Coast, man, they're planting trees and flowers in the garden, and we're still trying to put in the insulation and put windows up here, and there is a stark difference to like the how those systems work and operate, and we're just not there yet. We're not.
But we have the opportunity and the work to do, right? So if you're an organization today listening to Mike share his perspective, engaging parents is a huge opportunity with a huge upside. There's this really good organization called the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and they have this program called Equipando Padres, which translates equipping parents. And they have these webinars once a month where they invite parents right now virtually to just engage and learn a little bit more about why is STEM important, why is STEM relevant. But you're right, those are just initial touch points, but that we could do them deeper in our community as well.
Yeah, and you touch on something, because when we were at our conference at GCU like a month ago, the whole point was to bring industry with educators and to bring people together. And I think that is just such a winning combination, because when you have everyone kind of in lockstep working together, like good things happen. And I've seen this in other parts of the country where, the community is heavily embedded with the local companies, and they're going hand in hand, and they're working together, and they're getting stuff done. And, and it's not like it's, hey, I'm just doing this out of the kindness of my own heart. You're building the next generation of your next workforce, right? You're encouraging kids, hey, come join my company, because because if I'm a student in 8th grade and my rocketry club got supported by industry A, B, and C, right? Like I'm gonna remember that, and I'm gonna go back and be like, yeah, those guys were cool. Those guys sponsored us, and I remember back in the day when so and so came out and talked to our kids, and and I think that's that is something that we should really be jumping in a lot more of, is getting those connections made, So,
And Mike, I think you touched on this something perfectly as well, right? As we think about the industries and the companies that the STEM fields serve, we could easily get into the perspective that, well, if those industries exist today or those companies exist today, they'll come in looking for us. And what you're proposing, or what we've even been talking about, right, in this work of community, if you really want to be relevant tomorrow and you really want to make a lasting impact, it starts from the bottom up, right? Like, you need to be engaged in your community, you need to be present in your community, and you, even as a student, as a parent, as a community member, you don't necessarily have to go and work for possibly some of these companies. You can make the next company that makes a tangible difference. And you do that through the lenses, or through the prism, as we've been talking about today, of a STEM career as well. Well, Mike, before we wrap up, I always like to get some new perspectives from our guests that we have on here. Can you share we've been here in Arizona for years now. We were just sharing some tidbits how we love to not only travel around the country, but also eat in some really unique places around the country. But what about here in Arizona? What is your go-to place for really good Mexican food here in the state?
I don't want to start a regional war in Arizona, but I do have to say Miami, Arizona absolutely has the best Mexican food in the whole state, in my personal opinion. There is not a restaurant in the entire town that is bad, in my opinion. Globe too. Globe has really good Mexican food too. It's good.
I love that.
It's worth the drive. It's worth the drive.
Well, Mike, before we depart, is there anything you want to either ask me about either my experience or journey or what have you? What curiosities do you have?
I'm gonna ask you the same question then. So you're it's Friday night, and you and the wife are going on date night. So where am I going where am I going in Arizona for food?
Date night. So date night, then it consists of a babysitter. Then we have to figure out the timing that we have the babysitter. But if we do decide to go out on a date night, we're probably going somewhere in downtown Chandler. And we're gonna go either probably to one of the restaurants there that's proximate to even a movie theater. So when we go on a date night as parents, we're trying to tackle like 3 date nights in one, really. So it's like we need to go to a bar, and we need to get some good food, and then we need to catch a movie, and then all in the span of like the next 4 to 5 hours, so we can make sure the babysitter gets home on time as well a bit later. So our date nights mostly consist of that, but we look forward to it. And to be honest with you too, we need to be very intentional with that. As parents, when we became parents, one of the best advice that they gave us too was like, hey, be very intentional with your time together. And that sometimes, we love our kids, we love spending time with our kids, they're our world, but sometimes even the best way we could be our parents for our kids is also just being present for each other, just a few hours a month. Totally. And so we try to do that as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So what do you think? I mean, we've talked about STEM and, where we're at as a state and, where we need to go. Like, what would you say would be the next steps? Like, what if you were king for a day, what would you do?
I believe the upside of Arizona is huge. I believe the upside in our country is fantastic. With that said, I understand there's a significant amount of challenges, right? If not, the upside wouldn't be there, the opportunity would not be there. When I see that in our backyard, we're investing so much in manufacturing and technology and the next generation, that shows the promise, right? That there is some signs in here beyond just the location, and we don't have any natural disasters, and the worst that we have is a sandstorm here once in a while. And yes, there's some politics on that too, but I do see there is a significant investment of what could be. With that said, I do think examples like what has happening at ASU is an example of most of us, of what we could take and we could follow, right? Example of an organization like School Connect is doing, which brought us together as well. Example of what the corporations are doing, or what SHEP is doing, or what Aguila is doing. So you're seeing these organizations and these companies see this promise as well. And so I am bullish, I guess you could say that, right? And where the work could go. But I do think, and we've been having these conversations with our guests, right, is the future of the human experience the nature of humanity is community. It's us together, right? And so when we're mindful of putting that first, then the rest will build on each other, right? And so I think as the world gets more digitized and we're building the latest technology in our backyard, which is really cool, and we're gonna have self-driving cars maybe in the next 2 decades here, the premium becomes these human interactions, these human experiences, and these problems that we care about solving. And so our ability to navigate some of those challenges, the upside will happen here first, right? I think the role model where we could build this could be here in the state of Arizona. And so that's what not only gets me excited for this work, but most important, it gets me excited to have someone like you on this podcast, Mike, because I know you've been working on the foundation work on those homes. I'm building this out, and I'm just incredibly grateful for not only your work, your leadership, your advocacy, and having the opportunity to work with you. And with that said, for everyone that's watching today, how can people connect with you, reach out to you, and just be on this journey with you as well?
Oh, sure. I'm at ASU, and MP Vargas at asu.edu. So shoot me an email, and I don't have anything fancy, unfortunately. I'm not that kind of guy.
You're on LinkedIn.
I'm on LinkedIn. I got Facebook.
Okay.
That's about it, really.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for not only your conversation today, but your call to action for all of us that are watching. The potential of the future is bright. The challenges are there, but that's what makes this work not only so exciting, but worthwhile. Mike Vargas, thank you so much for being on the Future Human Experience.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was
Appreciate
awesome.
it.
Yeah.